Hello. It's Tales from the Shed again. We are going to talk today about sleep. Sleep. What are you saying about sleep? You were saying that you haven't had a good couple of days, which has been unusual.
No, it's been a whole week. It's been a whole week when my sleep has just basically been completely and utterly crap, really. Let's tell it how it is, So it's almost like that kind of thing of like, it's waking up at 1 o'clock in the morning, not getting back into sleep till 3, and then the next night having to go to bed at 8 because I was knackered, and then of course I'm up at 4, and then it's like, and then there was a 3 till 5, and I'm kind of thinking I really shouldn't be awake at this time.
It's a tricky one. I see a lot of people that are really concerned about sleep, and I think one of the big issues of sleep is the anxiety about sleep. If you don't sleep for 8 hours, you're going to die young. If you don't sleep for 8 hours, your brain function is going to go.
There's always something helpful on Facebook that's telling you that if you don't have enough sleep, you're going to die.
And I always think laying in bed thinking I should be asleep is really helpful. But I do see a lot of people, and I know, and we talk a lot about menopause, and I know it's part of menopause, but one of the things that we teach on the course, but we also have covered, and I do in clinic, is explain to people that sleeping isn't 1 8-hour slot. And we have sleep cycles of about 90 minutes to 2 hours, something like that, individual, because we're individual. And the first sleep cycle does a lot of physical regeneration in the body. The second sleep cycle does a lot of mental regeneration. So they're very physical, looking at neurons, looking at cells, looking at all the different processes in the body. And those 2 sleep cycles last about 3.5 hours to 4 hours in total.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of quite a useful thing when I learned about that. That's quite useful to me, because I do quite often wake up after I've had about 4 hours sleep.
Yeah, and that's
and
really
I remember you
common.
saying that was those 2 sleep cycles is kind of the minimum that you need. And the one is, like you said, the physical one. The other one is the kind of mental, and that's kind of filing. I think you describe it as filing. It's just filing things away, making sense of stuff. So if you've had those 2,
your body's kind of going, that's okay. That's it. That's the minimum. Now we're not going to die. We're not going to get... People that are severely sleep deprived become very psychotic, very strange. And if you have your 4 hours, it kind of keeps everything ticking over.
Yeah.
Then we have the next sleep cycle, which is much more about creativity. It's more often than not when we dream. It might be looking at hopes and fears, different things. It's where we process things that have gone on during the day, things that might be happening. If you're very spiritual, it might be if people think that that's where their higher self comes down, or whatever. But the third one is much more nice to have. And when people have 3 sleep cycles, they seem to really manage quite well, which is about 6 hours sleep. The 4th one seems to be much more to do with, it's really nice to have. That might be where you have your weird dreams, the ones you remember. Ideas come to people in that moment where they think, I just thought of the answer to the universe is this, or inspirational. It can be where they plan or get new ideas. So, that's very rough. And somebody that would write a thesis on this would say that that's a little bit too brief, and I accept that. But they're your kind of things. Now, when you have your sleep cycle, it doesn't have to be in 1 8-hour block. So you can have 4 hours, a 2-hour break, another one, a 2-hour break, a 4-hour break, and have different cycles.
Yeah, it was interesting because my husband was saying something like he thought there was a time in the Middle Ages or whatever it was where waking up in the middle of the night was quite normal.
It was.
That you'd have a part, and then you'd kind of do whatever it was, go partying, do whatever was happening, depending on which level of the class system you were at. And then you go back to sleep. And he said that was part of how it's like when you have a siesta in some parts, where you say, right, you have this part of the day, then you have 2 hours where you sleep, and then you have the rest of the day, and then you stay up later. So your sleep doesn't necessarily have to be in that huge block.
It doesn't have to be in a block. And what they used to do is they used to sleep at sundown and then wake up about midnight, and then they would prep the bread, prep the food, go out and do whatever they needed to do in that way, get everything ready, then go back to sleep and wake up in the morning, ready for their
probably at sunup.
At sunup,
yeah.
ready for their day. And by then the bread would have been risen, they can pop it in the oven, and those things happened. And there was actually the best time in the old texts to get to, if you wanted to have a baby, was best sex between sleeps.
Okay. Kind of seems obvious to me.
But it was between the sleeps, and that time in the night, rather than the morning to the evening. So it was the night time between sleeps. It was just, I guess it was connected with the moon energy, with the dark energy, and those sorts of things. But it was when your hormones and the female and the male hormones were, because they're doing this work regenerating, it was said to be
you're in good condition at
you're
that
in
point.
good condition at that point.
Okay.
And your hormones were ready to receive at that quiet time.
Not that there's any possibility of you getting pregnant, but maybe that's the thing. When I'm awake in the middle of the night, I ought to kind of say, "Hi, Rod.
This might be your thing.
This is great."
Or it could be that this is your creative moment. This might be where people get up and, instead of thinking, I must lay here and sleep and lay here and sleep, it might be where you read, or it might be where you do some writing, or it might be a creative time. Because it's very much in the process. As we get older, we get much more back to reconnect with nature, because we're not pushed into working or overcome things. So instead of worrying and being anxious, it's almost celebrating that little time that we have, celebrating that energy that we have, and making sure that if you are only getting 2 sleep cycles, you might need a third, and you can get that in the afternoon. You can have a nap.
That's true. Yeah.
So try and build in a space where you can have your sleep cycles, but don't think, I need to do it all now. Because
actually there is something quite nice about being awake. I suppose it's like being awake in the middle of the night when I don't have to look after children, feed children, change children, all of those things that it kind of, I think that's where it all started. My insomnia kind of started back then, in terms of because, my son didn't sleep through until he was nearly a year old, and it was that kind of thing, and he was up 2 or 3 times during the night, and one of us would have to deal with it. But there is that thing when you don't have to do something for somebody else and it's just you. And it was kind of thinking, you know what, it's actually quite nice just to read a book, because everything else outside is dark, it's quiet. I can go and make myself a cup of tea or whatever it is, and then rest, and that's quite good.
I think the only other thing I would be looking at is if you've got something on your mind or something that's worrying you, the time, what happens with the sleep cycles is you go through these different phases. So every cycle has deep sleep, shallow sleep, dream sleep, and then as it gets to the end of the cycle, it almost wakes you up, and then you tip into the next cycle. So if you have an anxiety and you've had 2 sleep cycles, it's like, well, you're not going to die. Now you can spend time on that anxiety. So let's, when people always go, what if I can't pay that bill? What if I can't pay that bill?
What if the earth crashes into
the sun? So if you find that you've got repetition, and you can't find that, you know what? I'm awake. Let's just look at the moon and find that peace and quiet. If you're getting that little voice, again, there's lots of things that, very simple things like batch flower remedies, bush flower remedies that are really good, homeopathy that's really good. Night owl can be good, but it's for a slightly different thing. It's not just for that anxiety. Or just having a little bit of talking therapy.
I use Amy John's brilliant hypnotherapist, and what she did was she did a kind of relaxation tape, and what's that? Because that's 20 minutes. And sometimes I kind of think, you know what, it's not happening, and I'm feeling dissatisfied about being awake. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to the 20 minutes, and that normally, even if there's sometimes I'm listening to it, I'm thinking, I'm still awake, I'm listening to it, and then I get to the end of it and I went, okay, so I turn it off, and then I normally will go to sleep quite quickly. So that's a good technique, I find.
That can work.
And it's all of those different things. I can't understand is why people keep saying you must have a regular, kind of schedule. You must try and go to sleep and wake up at the same time. And I'm thinking, how does that work?
I don't know how that works. It might work for some people, but it doesn't. Yeah. I think that's another level of anxiety.
Yes.
But if you find you can't enjoy being awake, that's where it's just like, it can just be a habit that you go, I am awake, I'm going to be awake, but what I'm not going to waste my time on is worrying about that bill. I'm going to
Yes.
write that down in a
Yeah.
book, and then I will do something constructive tomorrow. But right now, I can't get back to sleep.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to allow my head to be in control. So I'm going to
Yeah.
do a drawing.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to, do some writing. And there's a lot of don't go on a screen, it will keep you awake. I'm not sure I buy into that. I think it's the anxiety of what's on the screen that keeps you awake rather than the screen. So
yes, you've got your book on the screen. That's a bit of a problem, isn't it, really?
Well, the Kindles now have really nice lights on them, and I quite like it. But it's, if you are awake and you can't sleep, make a promise to yourself not to bring anxiety, but bring the creativity that is the nighttime creativity.
I know.
And catch up. If you have 3 sleep cycles, you'll be fine.
At some point in 24 hours.
At some point in 24 hours. If you'd like to add a 4th, you can do that. But don't look for the 8 hours. Just enjoy the sleep and the sleeplessness as part of your cycle, rather than without 8 hours, my legs drop off.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that you said that was quite useful is if you're really feeling oppressed by this, it could be quite useful to keep a sleep diary, because that actually gives you the information. So you could just kind of note when you get into bed and, oh my God, I'm awake at 1 o'clock. And then, but what you might find is, I've just kind of said, oh, right, the last week it's been horrendous. Is that really true? Because we tend to think we're probably awake for longer than we actually are. But it is that kind of thing that if you're thinking this is getting ridiculous and it is becoming a habit, it's just saying, so how much of a habit is it becoming? And then you can just see, maybe over a 2-week or 4-week period, you say, so actually this is my sleep, this is going, oh, actually, that was all right.
Yeah.
Or, there is something kind of going on here. So then you can look at what are the things. And as we said before, what are the things that appeal to you?
And what
is it a hot bath with lavender in it? Is it a sleep mist? Is it, going to get some homeopathy? Is it going to, maybe it's counselling if you've got that whirring brain all the time. Or
even just talking to your friend about something.
Yeah.
If you've got a good friend and they think, you know what, I just want to get this off my chest. And you might find that friend's a financial wizard and can sort out the fact that you can't pay your bill. Who knows? But then there is counselling, there's other things. Yeah. But if you are waking at the sleep cycle and you're not able to then think, I'm going to switch off and enjoy this being sleepless lark. Yeah. I'm going to have this moment in time. That's good.
So and I think the other thing to remember is that the more you're anxious, and I don't want this to sound like a kind of
don't panic
criticism. Don't panic. Because look how that works. But it's not about saying the anxiety could be keeping you awake. So you can't say to somebody, don't be anxious. That doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
But it's like, okay, recognizing it, maybe I am anxious about this. Okay, that's one thing. But it's not that something's wrong with you and you don't have to beat yourself up with it. And you know what, just go up and have, make a hot chocolate, whatever.
Do something else.
Yeah, do something else. Good.
Okay.